the reality is that the 98 million reduction in the population of Christians isn't the whole story. Because if you look at what the historic population growth rate had been for Protestants, Orthodox Catholics, and Roman Catholics, there would have been 264 million Christians in 1945 than there actually were. That's the number that's missing. Most of them. 80% of them were Protestants, and 20% of them were Orthodox Christians. And by the way, that's just World War II. That doesn't even count the Bolshevik Revolution. Now, that's 20, 30 years before that. 25 to 65 million Orthodox Christians were killed in Russia during the Bolshevik Revolution. Doesn't count that part. So, Russia now, you go there, you see all these spectacular buildings, spectacular cathedrals. These cities are much bigger than the populations who currently occupy them required. And that's because 1/4 or 1/3 of the Orthodox Christians in Russia were dead, are missing. At least that many. And today, right now, there's the conflict between the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church about who all of these cathedrals belong to, and the Catholic Church claims it's them. And the Orthodox Russians, Catholics say, no, we built it, it's ours. And this conflict has always gone on. I was in Latvia. I was looking for a Catholic church. I wanted to see what their Mass was like. Ended up one time at a Russian Orthodox service. That was a 2-hour-long service. I've got it all on video. But I went to a couple of what looked like Catholic cathedrals, and they were Protestants. And there were no Catholics. And I asked them, where do they go? Well, they kicked out the Catholics. I don't know if anybody converted or if they just left the country. Maybe they left the country. Maybe that's why there's so many Americans in the United States who are from Latvia. But it's easy to do. They did it. Small country like Latvia, 3.5 million people, just decided they had enough of the conflict, the huge conflict, much bigger than I ever imagined, between Catholicism and Protestantism. So, and by the way, maybe 6 million Jews are missing and they came back, but that's not the big issue. And in fact, I don't even blame it on the Jews anymore. Not that they have any way to get out from under what they did do, but now I think it was the Pope, the Roman Catholic Church. They were the ones behind all of this. The Jews were certainly instrumental in carrying it out. But how could 1% of the population who are Jews wipe out maybe 33% of the population of Russia who are Christians without somebody raising up and saying, BS? How could that have happened? That's the part I don't understand, is how the fact is they had the entire Roman Catholic Church behind it. And all the stories we hear, none of them make any sense. Jacob Schiff funded the Bolshevik Revolution, and he funded the Russo-Japanese War, and he funded the Japanese and the Russians both. These are just bizarre stories. They don't make any sense, number one. Number two, the last people in the world need to borrow money for a war is Japan. They've had a 33% savings rate forever. They have more money in the bank now. They out of the top 100 commercial banks in the world, top 100 of them, about 75 or 70 of them are Japanese banks, and each one of them is much, much larger than our biggest bank. And we're only 3 of the top 100 commercial banks are American banks. And that's not even where the Japanese keep their money. They keep it in the postal savings account. You add up 33% a year over the last 50 years, and what you've got is $130 trillion, which is the official figure, according to the Japanese website, for the amount of money in the postal savings account, independent of the commercial banks. The role of the Pope in the Catholic Church in the destruction of Protestantism. We get bits and pieces of these stories. You hear different things. But we don't have a unified look at the role this church played in murdering us and our ancestors. and why it is that when we founded this country, just 2 years earlier, in 1774, the British had essentially outlawed Protestantism. They said, if you're not a Trinitarian, you have no political rights. 2 years later, we found our country, founded by Unitarians mostly. Mr. Jefferson was a Unitarian. Benjamin Franklin knew all of this. He was there when, I forget the name of the preacher there in England, 1774, who was promoting Unitarians as a political class, to have voting rights and be citizens and public servants. He lost. Priestley, I think, was his name. But anyway, we found this country. None of our founding fathers, well, no, that's not true. About 1% of our founding fathers were Catholics. The rest were Protestants. This was founded as a Protestant country. And free exercise of religion, the way it's defined, means the right of Protestants to exercise their religion. And that means Catholics can't. No matter how many Catholics there are here, that doesn't change. That equation cannot change. Now, of course, right now, the population of Catholics is decreasing, even though they're bringing in 20 million illegal aliens who they think are Catholics, who in reality are goddess worshippers, who don't trust Catholicism at all, but will go into a Catholic church because front and center in a Catholic church today is the Virgin Mary, and you don't even see Jesus anywhere close by. I've been all over South America, Central America, Mexico, been to the churches there, never seen Jesus even close to the Virgin Mary. So, they don't have free exercise of religion, because if they did, then we don't. If they have the right to impose Trinitarianism on us, we don't have the right to practice our religion. Now, I know that there are some Protestant denominations, including my own, I suppose, Episcopalianism, although I really didn't know this, which does promote the Trinity, but they don't do it the way the Catholic Church does. They don't honor Mary. They don't worship Mary. They worship Jesus, like Jesus said to do. So we have been lied to. We've been lied to by the expert liars. I'm even beginning to believe that it's the Catholic Church that's behind the character assassination of people like Stalin. I was shocked when I first went to Russia. I heard all the same stories everybody else did about how he killed 26 million Russians. I never found a single Russian who knew about it, or could confirm it, or who knew a grandfather or a great-grandfather who was killed by Stalin. He killed 1 out of every 6 Russians, and nobody knew about it. And I talked to a lot of Russians, very candidly. Nobody was sitting around waiting, listening to us, spying on us. These were dinner parties where people could say what they wanted, and they did. And they talked about Jews the way that they wanted to. They could talk about their race without being embarrassed, like we can't do. They didn't know about it. Nothing. The one person who did know about it was our translator in Moscow, Sveta. She had been to Florida 2 years earlier and heard it in Florida. Never in her life did she know anything about it. So she went back to Russia, told all of her friends, researched it, and everybody's going, Stalin killed 26 million Russians? How? They scratched their heads, got together at dinner parties, talked about it, researched it. Nobody knows anything about it. They do know, and there are some horrible stories about what the Jews, Lenin and Trotsky did, and the Bolsheviks, 85% of them were Jews, a couple of them were blacks and Chinese, no Russians. Why would that be? Why allow that kind of leadership into a country like Russia? Well, it's the same thing we're getting here now. And by the way, the Jews are planning to do the same thing here that they did in the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917 and in World War II in 1945. They're getting ready to do the same thing here. Wake up, America, because it's right around the corner. God has protected us in a couple of very ingenious ways, but that could come to an end. We've got to act. We've got to get our act together and understand where it's coming from and who's doing what.